Hi, Alan.
Hi.
Sup, dude?
No.
Is that how we start this episode? Just me going, sup, dude?
Sup, dude. I think it's now your catchphrase. People are going to scream it at you from the streets.
Yike. I don't want that.
Oh my god, someone's going to get it tattooed, and then they're going to ask you to sign it.
No. Don't encourage such
If you
behavior.
get a sup, dude tattoo, make sure you tag the Fic List and Aaron, and she'd be more than... And come visit us whenever we have another in-person thing. She'd be
my
happy
God.
to sign it for you.
Is that somebody else's catchphrase? Like, is that some YouTuber, like, boy's
I
catchphrase?
have no clue. It's such a general... I would not be surprised if, like, 1,000 people have tried to use that as a catchphrase. I think it's too general to be used as a catchphrase.
I agree. I think that's not it.
She says to try to make sure that it doesn't stick as her thing now.
Yeah, I'm like, nope, that's not what we're doing anymore. Hello, Alan. Welcome back to the Fic List, everybody.
Woo, yay.
Woohoo.
Another episode. I know you all were wondering if it was going to happen. We were wondering if it was going to happen.
So were we.
So much we just didn't know. But now we do. And we know that we're talking to you.
Do we ever know? Does anyone ever know anything, really? What is knowing? How does one know?
Dear Lord.
It's been a wild fucking couple months, guys. Like, well and truly, Bonkersville, USA. Should we do the recap for the fans, Alan?
Oh, sure. After you.
Okay,
I'll sit here.
Yeah, so probably the last, like, true episode we were, like, prepping to go to... It's not AwesomeCon, is it?
Don't...
It must have been after AwesomeCon.
Thanks. It must have been.
Well,
Surely.
we went to AwesomeCon. That was a thing. And then
That was a thing that happened.
And then we did an episode with Burke, aka Icarus Pendragon, on TikTok, which was, like, very wonderful. And then we got the news in quick succession that we were going to Fan Expo Boston 2022. And I know that happened after we recorded with Burke, because originally we were like, we should get ice cream. And then we were like, we can't get ice cream. We're going to Boston. And they gave us 9 days notice.
Yep.
So we got our little gremlin asses on a plane and we went to Fan Expo Boston. Let's bear in mind this entire time, we have somehow become viral on TikTok. We're approaching 15,000 followers on TikTok, and, like, it's a whole thing. And, like, I keep posting stuff, and occasionally one will hit. I posted a TikTok the other day about the ace community in Wump that has, like, 50,000 views on it. And I'm like, okay, I found our niche. So we're doing that. We're doing the TikTok stuff, and we're, trying to just, like, be functional humans. We go to Boston. I get COVID. Because of course I got COVID.
Classic Aaron.
Yeah, and it's like, we did wear our masks. We were as careful as we ever are, because both of us take COVID really seriously. But, like, I drew the short straw. It was what it was. So I came back and I was like, I'm real sick, and everybody else was like, I'm fine, and I was like, thank God. And then Alan has been drowning in work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was drowning in mucus.
Oh no.
And then I went to the beach with my family, as is my custom in the summer, and that was great. What else has gone on? We've planned to record this episode about 6 times, and every single time one of us was like, no dice. Not happening.
The heart was willing. The body was like, if you don't take a fucking break right now, you're just going to cry incessantly.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those moments where it was like, you're taking a break now, bitch. Good luck. You didn't want to before when I asked nicely, so here you go. So that's been fun. Me and Caitlin went to My Chemical Romance in Brooklyn.
Oh my god, yes.
This past weekend, recording wise. This was the 9/11 show in Brooklyn, which was it was so good. I cried.
Of course.
I screamed. I had a lot of nostalgia feels. It was very cathartic. It was so good. Yeah. I'm sure there's other stuff I've forgotten, but it's all a mishmash in my brain because there's just been a lot going on. Oh, my tooth fell out. That happened.
I'm so sorry. What?
I have a fake tooth in the front. It's an implant.
Oh.
And the cap, the crown fell off the other day. This was the day that the Queen died. And, and so I was getting text updates from Caitlin about the Queen dying. And meanwhile, I'm like, I have no front tooth. I have to go to the dentist.
Your tooth was overcome with grief and was like, if the Queen is no longer here, neither shall I.
It popped off the post of the implant while I was flossing, which I feel like is an oxymoron, and I put it in a mason jar and took it to work with me so I could go to the dentist and then they could glue it back on my face. And so I walked into the dentist's office and I was like, hey, what's up? Did you guys hear that the Queen died? Can you put my tooth back in my face? It was wild. And they were like, no, what happened? She was in the hospital. She's dead. And I was like, she's dead.
She's dead. Oh,
yeah,
no.
it was, it's been a funky couple of weeks.
Yeah. It's been a funky year, I think.
Yeah. That's a fair point, actually. 2022 just it's not it. It's not
you know, it's had its ups, it's had its downs. It's been an eventful one.
Most certainly it has. But you know what it is? You know what's happening now, Alan? Do you know what is fast approaching us?
No, what? I was gonna say something really dark, and I was like, let's not go down that road.
Yike! I was gonna go with spooky bitch season, but okay.
Oh my god, yes, that's a lot, but yeah, that is a greater thing to fixate in.
Great, we're not gonna worry about that little existential episode that just happened over on that side of the screen. Yeah, it's almost spooky bitch season, which I'm thrilled by.
Yeah, there was 2 weeks in which I was just underwater because of work. And so I feel I was planning things for Halloween for October, like pre these 2 weeks. And then the 2 weeks hit and then I lost 2 weeks. So I was in a good place prep wise. And then now I'm like, fuck, I'm behind. How are we halfway through September?
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I've had shit going on like every weekend in September, which is my own fault. But I had, COVID, so I had 3 weeks off or whatever to prep for this. But I'm going to the Disney Halloween party at the end of this month, which I'm like super excited about. And I'm just
so jealous.
I had my first pumpkin cold brew the other day and I was like, life is complete. I'm good.
You felt your powers returning to you.
I did. I very slowly was like, yes, I am a whole person again, which was really great. This is not a Halloween episode, by the way.
Oh, no, not yet. Sorry, we're just getting you in the mood. We're being teasers. I know.
We're being little teasers. This episode is about something kind of angsty and dark and fun, though, right? I mean, I guess you could kind of call that.
Yeah, I don't know about fun, but some of us might have had more fun with it than others.
I had a lot of fun with it.
I wonder why.
I love this. What's our tag for today, Alan?
We're talking Hanahaki AU.
Hanahaki AU. Do you know what Hanahaki AU is, Alan?
Well, after 2 fics, yeah. Did I have to do some research before reading the fics? Absolutely. I sure did. Yeah.
Well, I kind of figured that was going to be the case. Oh my god, my cat is going to climb all over my lap. Okay, You're gonna chill? You're gonna chill? You gonna chill? Pause. Oh my god.
I believe in you. Oh my god. Geraldine, please.
So, I've lost all thread of consciousness. What were we talking about? Was it Hanahaki?
Yeah. No. So, if there are other listeners out there who may be like me and may not know what Hanahaki disease is off the top of their head, Aaron, what is it?
So I actually pulled up fan lore because I wanted to make sure that I got this right. Hanahaki disease is a fictional disease in which the victim coughs up flower petals when they suffer from one-sided or unrequited love. It ends when the beloved returns their feelings, romantic love only, strong friendship does not count, or when the victim dies. It can be cured through surgical removal, but when the infection is removed, the victim's romantic feelings for their love also disappear. It comes from Japanese manga and East Asian storytelling. I mean, there's some debate, I guess, on the fan lore, at least on the fan lore page, about whether it originated with the manga that made it popular or if it existed before that. Yeah. And I don't know enough to know. But it certainly became popular through through that pathway and then filtered its way into fan fiction specifically. Like, it is very much a fan fiction trope. Some of the stuff that we talk about is like translates to other genres, so like smut, fluff, whatever, like that's a pretty broad strokes thing. This is a fanfic thing, like very distinctly, and I kind of love that about Hanahaki. I mean, I guess it's not exclusive, but it's like very, it's like I'm trying to think, much more common in fanfic than other media. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Do you disagree with my assessment?
It's not that I disagree. It's that I was just trying really hard to think about whether or not I can think of any other like pieces of media that would have had specifically Hanahaki disease. But I guess that specifically I have only seen in fanfic. And I guess this manga that popularized it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think it's like, it's a fascinating thing to play with in fan fiction for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of ways you can like mess with it. There's a lot of ways that you can shift it around. Sometimes people do chronic Hanahaki instead of like acute Hanahaki, which I think is really fun. It raises some interesting questions about like not like too heavily so, but just like consent. Like, if somebody's going to die because you don't love them, like, what does that do to the person who's, like, the love interest if it's not requited? Like, there's some interesting, like heavy angst to play with. It can be played off as, like, more, like, not fun because you're theoretically dying
listeners, this is not a thing that, like, I can think of to make a fun, cutesy thing. It's just angst. It's just another vehicle for angst. It's angst with a mask, with a flower mask on.
It's angst. It is. That's fair. Well, it's like, I guess you could say that some people take it lighter and don't dive too deep in the like, oh, everything is terrible and everyone is suffering and you're gonna cough up flowers and like petals and thorns until you die a brutal death. So I love Hanahaki.
Yeah. Oh, really? You love Hanahaki? Really?
Who is surprised? How did you feel about it,
Alan? I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. That's
so exciting.
I am interested in like maybe reading another one in a like, you know, maybe not immediately, but in the future, like if I see a Hanahaki fic, I would be inclined to click on it. I also think that it's really interesting because it's one of those things that you can mold to whatever, like it has to be like, oh, a person coughs up flowers when they have unrequited feelings of love or whatnot. Fine. Right. But after that, then the system that you choose to like employ, like, you know, you can go really surgical. Like one of the fics that we read took it into a really like magical curse kind of a place. And I just, I find it really fun when you can play with that, you know, really make it your own and fold it in to the fandom that you've chosen.
Yeah. I think it's a really malleable thing, just like you were talking about. You can really sort of mesh it in, particularly if your source canon is magical or fantasy already. It blends really well with established magic stuff. It's like, it's a great curse. It's a great byproduct of magic gone wrong. It's a great like thing that is like, that just happens in this magical universe or this fantasy universe. And it doesn't have to be fantasy or magic, but I think it lends itself really well in that scenario. That's Hanahaki.
And that's Hanahaki.
Is this how we gently dip the waters into eventually getting me to actually talk about Wump? Or do we just like keep skirting that one for a while?
I think we'll continue to skirt for the time being, because we do have two fics to talk about.
That's true. Well, mostly because, you know, soft Boi Alan does not want to read Wump fic.
I mean, I know that eventually I will. I just feel like I just went through Hanahaki disease. I've just been cured, and the last thing I need is to talk about Wump.
Your love was just requited.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
You're hilarious.
Okay. That's fine. So, who wants to start?
Well, should we also mention that today's fics are actually not our picks, technically?
Oh, yeah, I forgot that was a thing that we were going to talk about. But you're totally right. Alan, do you want to explain?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, dear listeners, Aaron and I were like, you know what? We do too much work for this podcast. We want less work.
That's not at all what we said, but okay.
No, in actuality, what happened is that Aaron and I have been really cognizant of the fact that we have really incredible listeners who have been just pouring in a ton of recs into our fan rec submission, and we haven't been doing a really great job of keeping up with those. So when we were trying to think of what episode to do next, we were like, well, why don't we look at the rec fic. That's not what I'm looking for. Form.
Fic
That's
recs?
what. Let's look. I was like,
Let's look at the Google Doc.
Yeah, I was like, let's look at this Google Doc with fan recs, and see if there's any that kind of, we have 2 of one kind of AU or anything. Let's go with that. And Aaron was like, how about Hanahaki? I know that I've seen at least 2. And I was like, great, sold, we'll do it. So we're reading 2 Hanahaki AU fics that were courtesy of listeners.
Yep. My favorite thing about that is like, want to do Hanahaki? And you're like, yeah, sure. No idea what that means.
Okay, like, but how often is that the case, though? You know,
it's frequently the case. To be fair.
It is, in fact,
but it was
frequently
quite
the
fun.
case. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I was really pleased when you raised the possibility of doing this. And I think, dear listeners, if you're not familiar, what we do is we have an open Google Doc where you can send us fan fictions that are either you've written or you've read and you really love that you want us to consider for the podcast or to like read. We have a lot right now. We have like a couple hundred that we just haven't been good about keeping up with. So like,
sorry.
Temper your expectations. But we've thought about a couple of different ways to incorporate this, honestly, and like this is one of them. We're thinking about doing this more, so if this episode doesn't suck, which TBD, if this episode goes well, we'll do this more and it'll be great. We've talked about maybe doing some like TikTok fan rec, like shorts kind of thing, and like doing it there as well. So let us know in the comments down below, LOL, or just like hit us up with your ideas about how we can better incorporate fan recs. And send us some if you want. They are linked in the summary of our episodes, and if you are coming to us from TikTok, it's in the link tree in our bio, and it's the link tree that's also in our Twitter account. So it's there. There's a Google Doc. You can fill it out. You can do it anonymously. You can do it with your name. It's up to you.
We've tried to make this form as accessible to everyone as possible.
Yeah, I mean, this bitch loves a Google Doc, so we have several of them. Several of them exist in our lives. We also, I made a website.
Oh my god, you did.
Most recently. The Google Doc is not on the website, but you could theoretically get to all of our other social medias. If you just type in theficlist.com, we come up now, so you can find us. It'll be great. Yeah, so let us know what you think about this new setup. I think so far, I liked the prep aspect of it. I liked I didn't have to pick a fic. That was so helpful.
That was so helpful to not have to spend like 8 hours looking for a fic when I could just be like, yep, I'm going to grab this one.
Yeah. My issue, and it wasn't an issue, or it is, but it's whatever. The problem I ran into is that the fic that I read was a fandom that I have zero knowledge of. And that is like bound to happen. It happens when you pick fics of stuff that I don't know, and that's totally fine, but it just made it pretty hard to understand. And that I think is more likely to happen, and it could theoretically be that neither of us know what's going on in the fandom. If we choose fic recs that are from fandoms that neither of us are in, which could be an interesting
so basically what I'm hearing is that you had the experience that is my lived experience of the show,
and I didn't love it,
where I don't know what the fuck's going on with any of these fandoms. Okay.
I had to open up a wiki, and I'm not thrilled with it.
Good. Welcome. And I'm so sorry, did I hear you say the fic you read? Were we only supposed to read one?
No, for this episode.
So
I had already read the one. The other one.
There it is. Okay, great. I just wasn't sure. I was like, wait, is this another instance in which I read both? You know what, though? I'm happy to. I'm happy to have read both. I liked them.
You did. I mean, you read, like, you always read both because you're a sweetheart. And I have, first of all, I mean, this fic and I go way back. Yeah. I mean, this fic and I go way, the one that you read and I go way back, and the author of this fic and I go way back. So anyway, maybe we should actually fucking talk about fanfiction.
Yeah, I guess we should.
At this point.
Only 20 minutes in.
Yeah, literally 20 minutes in. Yike. Wait, who wants to start? Do you want me to start? Do you want to start?
No, I think I want to start because so that I'm talking about the one that's in my column.
Great. Yep,
Okay.
I love that.
Great. So then the one that was assigned to me, quote unquote, despite the fact that we read both of them, is In My Field of Paper Flowers. It is written by Pan Bolin on Archive of Our Own. Mm-hmm. It is a magician's fic, so can we please
it's been
reset
0 days.
Thank you.
0 days since a magician's fic. Woohoo!
And it is to no one's surprise a Quelliot fic.
Doesn't it make sense now why I was like, I've read this fic? What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, as soon as you said, like, well, I've read one, I was like, oh, duh, of course she has.
Of course I have, yeah. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, the summary reads, it starts with lilacs, and then the tulips show up. Or, Quentin has chronic Hanahaki disease, and he doesn't want anyone to know about it.
Yep.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Can I just say, I think I've been through The Magicians, not the show or the book, to be clear, but I've been around the block with The Magicians once or twice. I've read the wikis. I've seen some YouTube videos. And so when I tell you that I was floored, I was offended, I was enraged to start reading a fic for The Magicians and be like, I have no fucking idea what's happening right now.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So I guess we should give a bit of a rundown. The summary is, like, very good, very straightforward. If this takes place, and of course jump in and correct me where I'm wrong from my understood
I will.
thing of what I've read.
Fear not,
first
Alan,
of all,
I will.
Thanks. First and foremost, this has a non-linear narrative, which they did tag, and I was appreciative for, and that only confused me more, which is not the author's fault, to be clear. I think what I should actually preface this with is that my confusion stems from my lack of knowledge of the show. Like, I don't know enough about the canon for this to have been the most accessible read for me. And I think that is just, one of those byproducts of, like, when you're reading fic from fandoms you're not familiar with, not all of them are going to be beginner friendly. Let's say this is like an intermediate. No, right. I'm not even an intermediate. I would say this is you have this like a little above intermediate.
This is a somewhat deep cut in the fandom world, in the Quelliot fandom, and deep cut in the sense that it does rely very heavily on your knowledge of many storylines from canon in order to understand it. So, yeah.
So my understanding is that there's an overarching narrative here, which is the last season of The Magicians, which is when Elliot is possessed by the monster.
Second to last season.
Season
4.
Season 4. Great. Wherein Elliot is possessed by the monster. And all hope is lost, basically. And Quentin is living with Hanahaki disease, just kind of mourning Elliot has rejected him, and trying to move on with his life. But he is confused because, in theory, the monster tells him that he's dead, that Elliot is dead. But Quentin is like, then why do I keep coughing up flowers? Like, so there's like a glimmer of hope in him. And then there's like this parallel where we jump back in time a lot with Nif and Alice. And that was Quentin's first experience with Hanahaki, where he like started throwing up flowers once Alice was a Nifin and didn't reciprocate. So there was that. And then slowly he realizes that he like has fallen for Elliot when he stops throwing up the kinds of flowers he would throw up with Alice and was only throwing up Elliot kind of flowers.
Right.
Yeah. And then we kind of go through that narrative basically wherein Quentin realizes somehow that Elliot is actually still alive somewhere in the monster, and so he is not letting anyone kill the monster because he's like, Elliot's in there, hang on. And then he jumps into time at some point, like jumps back in time to get what he needs. Like they need a spell to try and get Elliot back. And
yeah, that's a canon thing.
yeah, no, I'm aware. Yeah, so he goes back in time to get what they need for the spell, and then the spell doesn't quite work or something, or like the axes that they need break and they still need them, and Quentin has been told of his like discipline, which is like small mending of small objects, I think, or something like that.
Repair of small objects. Don't worry about it. Minor mendings.
Oh, excuse me.
This show still has me in a fucking chokehold, and it's been years. This is on me. This is my problem.
Correct.
It's my cross to bear.
It sure is. Minor mending, which means that he then does a spell that would normally have killed a magician if it wasn't for the fact that his discipline was mending. Like, that gave him just the extra little boop to not die when he puts the axes back together.
A little boop.
Am I wrong? You're going to sit there and tell me I'm wrong?
I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're wrong. I'm going to sit here and chuckle heartily.
Yeah, so he mends the two axes that they need and then promptly passes out because it takes all of his energy, and he's basically almost at death's door. And the end of the fic is him waking up in a hospital afterwards, and Elliot basically being there and being, saved from the monster's done with, and then Elliot is also apologizes for turning Quentin away when Quentin, confessed his feelings. Elliot was, admits that he was scared, but doesn't want to be scared anymore, and then they have a very lovely, like, reconciliation, and that's the end of the fic.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a pretty short one.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, it is.
And so I will start, I will say, I liked the fic. I had a good time. But I think...
Did you?
I did. Like, it's well written, and I think it was, like, the characterization was good and fascinating. I think that I, myself, probably did not have, like, the best experience just because I don't know enough about the canon. Like, there was just every 3 sentences or so, there was, like, a reference to something from the canon out. And I'm like, okay, so this is, like, for a diehard Magicians fan, which is fine. And that's awesome. I'm so happy that it exists. But I think that, coupled with the nonlinear narrative, was just death to me. Because I was like, where's the mosaic?
You're like, where's the one touch point in this whole show that I understand and remember?
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I've also sent you almost exclusively mosaic fics in the past, so it's like I've really led you astray.
Well, but also, like, I was thinking, like, something wonderful, something, that's what it's called, yeah, something good. That had like was basically a configuring of a certain part of the show, and I read that and understood it, and I was like, okay, I have a basic understanding of the narrative of this part of the show, and I was like, and I know about the mosaic, and in theory, I know about other little characters and like overarching plot lines. It just, like, this fic happened to find every gap in my knowledge, and I was astounded and enraged.
Yeah, and, like, it does deal a lot with the time. I mean, it deals almost exclusively with the time of Elliot being possessed, which is generally a genre, or like a sub-genre of Magicians fic that I didn't send you a lot of, and because, one, I don't tend to read a lot of it. I'm more interested in the aftermath of his possession, generally speaking, because of the way that season 4 ended. Spoilers if you missed that. I was more interested in a world in which both Elliot and Quentin got to work through that than I necessarily was rehashing or working through, like, the canon experience of it. Yeah. But also, like, it's a very wumpy thing, so the ones that I do read tended to be really dark, so I never sent them to you. So this is dealing with a lot of the canon material that you wouldn't have touched in previous fics also.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it makes sense. I love this fic.
Good. I'm glad.
Of course I do.
Of course you do.
I love all of Kate's work. Pan Bowen, aka Kate, writes
Hi, Kate.
just a lot of really great stuff. there's a crossover fic between the Chronicles of Narnia and the Magicians.
Oh, I think you really always tell me about this. I really want to read it, but I want it to be completed.
Same author. But yeah, this is one, I mean, to be fair, I didn't reread it when we were planning for this episode, so it's been a while.
Shock of all shocks.
I remember loving this, and I think the use of chronic Hanahaki is always interesting to me. I mean, what did you think about the device of Hanahaki in this fic?
Here's the other thing, is that this was my first Hanahaki, and I don't know that it was a good one to have started on. I just think that the way that it was used was kind of used in place of Quentin's depression, if that makes any sense. Like, it felt like that took the place of the chronic condition, and like it was still like a lot of Quentin stayed basically the same, in my opinion, to other iterations that I've read, and that his like he's brooding, and he's like trying to work through his emotions and his feelings and working through X condition. And it just turned, to me, it felt like the condition then was Hanahaki disease as opposed to depression. So I feel like it didn't stand a chance to shine on its own, like the concept. Like, it became enfolded into the Magicians and that universe and the magic that they do, which is, is what she was going for. I'm assuming, she takes the concept and is plugging it in as seamlessly as possible into this universe. But because I am lost in that particular section of the universe, I was just more lost. Yeah,
I mean, fair. I liked it.
Good. I'm so glad. And I'm not saying it's bad, and I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy it. I had a very good time. I thought it was very interesting, and I thought that the characterizations were really good.
Yeah.
I just think it was maybe not for me.
I think that's fair. This was for me.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair point about... It can be a struggle if you're new to a trope, right? Any trope, and that's not exclusive Hanahaki, but especially one that falls into a more complicated world building situation. If your first experience with it is a riff on it. And this kind of is that. Like, it takes all of the sort of standard Hanahaki stuff, but it's very much framing it as a chronic thing. It's not killing him. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's ever a discussion of him removing his feelings for Elliot. Like, that piece of the Hanahaki lore is not part of it.
I don't think it exists in that.
Yeah, and that's a big part of Hanahaki, like, lore, is that you can get rid of it, but in doing so, you either die or, like, you lose the ability to feel. Like, it's really dangerous to get rid of it. And making that choice and navigating that choice is often a big part of Hanahaki, and that just like isn't in this fic, which is totally fine. But if you are looking to like get a primer in what Hanahaki is like you don't start with like the B-side. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I kind of wish I had read these inverted. I wish I had read the one we're about to talk about first, and then come back and read this one, because I think maybe I would have had a different framework or foundation set for like what Hanahaki disease, what I think it like can look like in fic.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. But no, it was, I mean, lovely. It was beautifully written. And I saw the name Pam Boleyn, and I recognized it enough from you speaking about it that I knew that it was going to be a good fic. And it is.
Yeah.
I just think that it's not beginner friendly, and I am still, as much as I don't like saying it, as much as it fucking kills me to say, I guess I'm still a beginner at the Magician's lore, despite the sheer volume of magician media I have consumed with these little peepers
since 2019.
It's been 3 years. Free me.
This is your white whale, Alan. This is your white whale. You'll never conquer it.
I'll never.
I'm
no.
So sorry.
That's okay. It was really funny, actually.
There's a meme. You know the meme where it's like, there's the two stick figures sitting next to each other, and they go, "It's fine." And then the next panel, it's like silence, and then there's another panel that goes, and then another thing.
Yup.
I feel like there's one that just says the Magicians, and like that's how it is with this fandom. It just crops up again and again and again, and there's always another thing.
Yup. Honestly, you know what? Kudos to that fandom for always finding ways to like just floor me, flabbergast me.
Nevertheless, we persist.
Nevertheless, we persist. Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. And if I had to rate this, I would give it a 3.5.
Okay, fine. I mean, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. My rating would be much higher, obviously, but I think that makes sense given everything that you just shared and your perspective on it. Kate, just know that you're at least a 4.2 in my heart. Yeah, we also don't know who recommended this particular fic.
Yeah.
I have a theory it was Mai. Hi, Mai.
Was it you? Was it you, Mai?
That's my best guess because Mai and Kate often collaborate on fic and are friends as well. Yeah.
Oh,
really
I did see Mai's like username on something. Was it this fic?
No. Where? Maybe it was a different one?
It was in like an author's note somewhere. I was like, I was
really?
like, I was like, I know that name.
Maybe it is this one. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm sure it doesn't
Somewhere.
matter. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I know Mai and Kate collaborate and write together. So my guess is this is a Mai recommendation for me, probably.
Oh, I'm sure. I am fully sure that this was strictly like for you. Should we add that to the form? Like for Aaron, for Alan.
We should just make it a little check mark where it's like who will like this fic? Aaron, Ellen, both. Neither.
Which I liked the fic. I
know.
Didn't seem to derive as much enjoyment as it brought you.
That's fair.
As a fan of the Magicians.
I think that is very valid of you.
Thanks.
Yeah, cool beans.
Cool beans.
Should we jump into the next one?
I think we should.
All right. So the next one is the one that I was assigned to read, but Alan also read it, so he's going to have to help me.
I'm happy to.
Yeah, this fic was recommended by our friend Evelyn. Hello, Evelyn. Thank you. Evelyn recommended, of the 200 or so fan recs that we have sitting in that Google Doc, I would wager a guess that 150 of them are from Evelyn, and I love that for us all. That's not a knock on you, Evelyn. You're great.
You're a gem. You're a treasure.
Yeah, they are a treasure. So the title of this fic is Zone of True Lips, as in two lips, but true lips, by Tattle Told on AO3. It is an Adventure Zone podcast fan fiction, and I will be straight up. I do not listen to this podcast. I don't know anything about this podcast. I am a narcissist, and the only podcast I listen to is the Fic List. And any episode of other podcasts where the Fic List are guests.
She's joking. She loves other podcasts, especially the ones we've guested on. Those are her favorite.
I've guested on Evelyn's podcast. Guess which episodes I've listened to. That's not true. I listened to most of the first 2 seasons of Evelyn and their dad's podcast, and then I fell out of it because I was a jerk. But yeah, no, I do have a tendency to not listen to podcasts. I actually really struggle with audio-only medium, which is hilarious.
You're killing me.
I've never done well with talk radio. I don't do well with audiobooks. Like, I can't listen to audiobooks. They lose me.
Wow.
So I have not listened to this podcast. I have no idea what's going on. But it is a Merle High Church and John primary ship fic. And it's a Hanahaki AU that's also like AU modern setting. Like, it's modern with magic. So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, from my brief, and I mean brief, dive into the Wikipedia for this particular show, is that this is like a high fantasy, like, role play universe. There's magic. Merle High Church is some kind of dwarven ex-priest character, and John is like maybe the villain of the original series. Yeah,
it's my understanding that John is the Hunger. That's the character name in the show. And that when the fandom was trying to find a surname for John, they just gave him the last name Hunger. So in a lot of fanfics, he'll be John Hunger. I thought it was interesting. Yeah.
So that's literally all I know about this. So if you, dear listener, are like a deep lover and fan of the Adventure Zone podcast, and I say anything stupid, please know it wasn't intentional. Like, I really didn't mean to. I just to me, to quote Burke from previous episodes, this was just a fun short story for me. I don't know what's going on. So I'm sure there are cool references and stuff that I just didn't get, but it's fine. It is 19 chapters, which is one of the longer fics that we've read
this
in
season.
recent memory. Yeah, 74,000 words, which, to be fair, is not a crazy high word count, I say, as if that's not like a full novel, but whatever. And so the summary of this fic, to sort of wrap us up here in this intro. John is a freshly retired man with no ambitions, hobbies, desires, or anything. To keep himself busy, he takes up a job at what should be a quiet, easygoing flower shop, only to meet Merle High Church and send that whole calm retirement shtick in the fucking garbage. He now has his hands full of loud coworkers determined to befriend him, battling wits with his boss, who is his opposite in every way, and right at some point as he starts coughing up flowers. An AU in which John works at a flower shop and contracts Hanahaki, a curse in which the victim expels flower petals as a result of unrequited love. I have to read the author's note, which also says, someone on Tumblr once said they were happy John was an old man so people wouldn't ship them, and they'd have to see Fic of the Hunger. And they wouldn't ship them and see... Wait, what? My brain is mashed potatoes.
Oh, no.
They were happy that John is an old man so people wouldn't ship them, and then the people would have to see Fic of the Hunger. Guess what? These old dudes are gonna get in love even harder now. Wow, I struggled with that.
You did great. I don't know what you're talking about. Magic of editing.
Thanks. The magic of editing. Yeah, so that's actually a really fantastic summary. It is very much what I read, so that was great. It was very cool. I took notes.
Love it. Let's hear them.
If I don't, my brain breaks, although apparently it breaks anyway. So this fic starts off, John Hunger is a 50-something person, I'm assuming. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming they're human, who is having basically a lifelong midlife crisis. Like, he's just chronically bored, like wildly sort of like unhappy, but in this like very even keel, like nothing interests him. He cannot, like, he doesn't want to do anything. He goes, like, he has all this money because he's retired early, and his coworkers basically just like sent him off with a thing of flowers because he's never made a friend in his life. And like he goes off on these extravagant trips to try to, like, you know, fill the void, the hunger in him, and nothing works. And so he decides to go work at a florist shop under Merle High Church, who is a dwarf character, I guess, and is like crazy exuberant, like the complete and polar opposite of John. He wears like Hawaiian shirts and is like everyone's dad. So he just like has a good time. 2A, there are a lot of other characters who work at this flower shop that I could not keep track of. They're all younger though, and I assume they're all from the podcast. So sorry, I know they're there. I know they're important. I don't remember who they are. So, John, it turns out, is really great at admin. He's like me. This bitch loves a spreadsheet, and he is very bad at floral arrangements. So he's also really bad at socializing, which, same, John. I liked that Hanahaki was a thing in this universe. They talk about it kind of early, and it kind of peppers in throughout the series, but or throughout the fic. But it's like a thing that people get, so it's culturally very woven in. There's people on like fantasy YouTube who talk about their experiences with Hanahaki, which I like loved. Yep. Most people get it, and either they end up in a relationship or they die. Like, those are the choices that people make. You can get it surgically removed in this universe, but in that case, you lose the ability to love permanently. Like, it's not just your love for that person, it's your ability to feel the emotion of love. So most people don't choose that option. And there's not a whole lot of understanding of like why it happens. It like happens in clusters, kind of like the flu, or COVID, I guess. But it's not like a respiratory thing. Don't worry about it. And so it just like, it happens in clusters. Like, they think it might be like family line, like a curse, something, and then like strong emotions trigger it. Like, there's just not, like, the science isn't strong necessarily behind it, because it's a mashup of science and magic, and that makes it difficult. So all that said, the crew invites John to a barbecue, and then he initially says no, and Merle is like, you should go, and he's like, okay, so he goes. There's a character named Taco, Taako, who seems real annoying, to be honest with you. He's real full of himself, and I didn't love him. He makes an entrance where he's like, everyone loves me, and I was like, not this bitch.
He is an elf.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Everyone else seemed very normal at this barbecue. Like, it's very, like, normal people who, like, care about each other. And, like, John, like, is secretly, like, a deeply emotional son of a bitch and, like, catches feelings for Merle really early, but he has no idea how to process emotions, so he just, like, sits with them. And it's, like, a lot of internal monologue, this fic, about, like, John trying to, like, kind of logicify a lot of his feelings or, like, process what he's going through. he also like process Hanahaki like super early because he just keeps like coughing up these little petals and they keep showing up. So the fix like jumps months, and the time jumps are pretty long in between chapters. And he spends the first couple of months like learning his job and learning Merle and like hanging out, like clearly like developing relationships with people. And he finally sort of makes a flower arrangement, and it's like very deeply emotionally charged. And then he coughs up a bunch of flowers in front of Merle, and this is the impetus for him to be like, your boy has Hanahaki. It's Merle. Like, he's in love with him. It's bad news bears. So he talks to Taco about it, which I think is a mistake. And apparently Taco has previously had Hanahaki, and he survived because he's with his husband, and it was fine. But Taco basically tells him to like take the curse, like take the surgical removal like option, because he's like, Merle's not gonna love you, which is so shitty.
Yeah.
So shitty.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great for Taco.
Yeah, I didn't love Taco again. My next point, we're on point 9. Point 9, John's feelings literally put him in the hospital.
Yep.
He goes to the hospital. And then my next plot point is Merle texts him a lot. So John's like, okay, bet. I love this man. I'm a suffer about it. So they go on this like not date. So John like basically leaves the hospital for a day while he's like dealing with worsening Hanahaki to the point where he's like not well, but he's like still kind of functional. He takes this like ill-advised medication so he can have a normal day. They go to like some racetrack or whatever. John and Merle
to see two of their friends race.
Yeah. And so he hides the Hanahaki, and like that makes it way worse because this particular potion or like medication or whatever it is that he takes like basically suppresses all of the flowers in his system until they rot. And so for like 24 hours or whatever, so he gets back and he like vomits up all of these flowers, and half of them are poisonous. So he's now given himself like blood poison. It's not great. So he decides, because he's literally dying, that he's going to go through with the spell to get rid of his ability to love, which will make it so he doesn't die. But oops, now Merle also has Hanahaki because he loves John. And now Merle is dying and John can't feel anything because he has removed his ability to love. You see where this is going. So Taco's an asshole. His husband comes in and is like, Taco's a dick. I'm so sorry. Like, this was so bad. There's a lot of feelings. Yeah, I forget. And then you can argue with me about plot later. This is what I remember.
Yep. And
then Merle is dying. John has no emotions, but he's like, he clearly still cares about Merle, which is kind of fascinating. Like, he said he doesn't love him. And like, it's a whole thing about like, I know that I had all of these feelings at one point, but I no longer feel them. And he kind of like logifies them. He's like, this is how it was before. It's fine. It's like not fine. And so Merle, like, finally with like Merle on the verge of death, John goes to a couple of the people who are in the group, Loop and Barry, who are scientists, and is like, well, fuck, can you recurse me with Hanahaki so that Merle doesn't die? Because even though I can't physically love him anymore, I still love that weird little dwarf man, is what my notes say. And they're like, yeah, but you're probably not gonna survive. Like, we've tried this a couple times and literally every person has died because basically the flowers just instantly kill you, which is like not the goal. And John's like, I don't care. With my dying breath, I will like make sure that Merle knows that I love him so he lives.
Well, and the thing there is that the Loop and Barry had been working to find like a cure to Hanahaki when John's got really bad. And then John essentially ghosted the entire world post his getting the counter spell, and there's no emotions. He's like, I don't want any part of any of their lives anymore. And in that time, Barry and Loop furthered their research in order to find like the origin of, like, they've been able to figure out the like the god particle basically of what causes Hanahaki and all of this. So he basically asks them to recurse him with it, and it's like it's never been done in the history of ever.
Right.
So they're
and
like,
the people that they've tried it on just haven't survived.
Well, yes.
They're convinced he's going to die. Like, that's their point, is that he's not going to survive this. They're like, you have basically a 0% chance if we do this. Like, you have to sign all the waivers because this is bad. So what's wild is that he does live. They are successful. He doesn't die. He like runs off. The first thing he does, he runs off to go put together an I love you bouquet of flowers for Merle that is like the biggest chaos batch of flowers in the world. And it's basically, he thinks it's his dying move. He thinks he's like, I'm just gonna like do this. They're gonna find my dead body in the flower shop and it's gonna be fine, but like at least I've done this to prove that I loved him. And the sort of like end chapter is that they lived and they love each other and they're gonna be a team, even though John now has like chronic non-fatal Hanahaki. That's like the side effect of the situation, is that he will always and forever cough up petals, but he's just like accepted that this is now like a part of his life, and everybody's kind of like, you're a medical marvel, dude, and he's like, I'm in love with Merle. And then the last chapter is literally a series of vignettes about their life together from then on out, and it's super cute, and there's like some really cute smut, and I loved it.
Amazing.
That's my summary. What did I get wrong? Because I did read this at 1 a.m. and I was very tired.
You didn't get anything wrong. I think the only thing that I would add to it is that part of the fic is not just John's like trying to figure out how he feels about Merle and like love as a whole concept, but also the fact that he's never had friends before, and suddenly he has Merle, and he has this community that comes with Merle that loves Merle, and so by extension have started to love him. And throughout the chapters you get to kind of know each of the characters and like their different personalities and all of that kind of stuff, and so that adds an extra layer of like ouchies at top of like whenever he is no longer able to feel things, because he's remembering like all of the friends basically come out of the woodwork and like each in their own way are telling him, hey, Merle is dying, help. And John's just like, I know I don't have the capacity, I don't have the capability of helping, because I cannot feel love anymore. And that is ultimately what makes the decision for him. It's not necessarily that he like is able to say, oh, I'm in love with Merle, that makes him like, I'm gonna risk my life for it. It's more so the feeling of like, I was given something really nice, and if I don't at least try to do something, Merle will die, and by extension all of these other people will be hurt, and they've been like good people. I don't want to hurt good people. So I would just say like the friendship aspects, it's the whole fic is really interesting in how John is navigating connecting with people in general.
I think that's a really fair point, and I glossed over it because I really needed to just find the through line in how long and lengthy
that was a great summary
was. Thank you. But there is a whole found family element to this fic. And John, like, because Merle's family is his friends. Like, he was previously married. That marriage was not particularly like lovely or whatever. He has some like clear family issues, which I think is derived from canon. So the people that he surrounds himself on a day-to-day basis may not be his blood family, but they are his family, and they are the family that he's like amassed together. And John like kind of is welcomed into that and experiences what a found family is like for the first time. And so yeah, you're totally right that like those friendships are really important, and that is a huge factor in like, it's also why Merle will not take the out, because John thinks this is all told through John's perspective, but he's like, I know in my bones that Merle will never do this, because to live without the love that he has curated over the course of his life would be a fate worse than death for him. So he would rather be dead than give up loving the people that he has surrounded himself with over time. So that's kind of the impetus for John being like, well, then curse me with it. It's worth it because I need to give this back to him.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's a great fic. I had a great time. I mean, it's like devastating, and it was very much like a late night read, but despite not knowing really fucking anything about the source material, I felt like it was at least AU enough and like constructed enough as an AU that like I could read it on its own terms, and I got stuff out of it. I'm certain that there are references and characters and characterizations that are specific to the original podcast that I didn't pick up on, but I still like really enjoyed it. And like I was saying earlier, I loved the use of Hanahaki in this. I thought it was so well woven into the fabric of the culture that they were in. Like, people would buy Hanahaki floral arrangements, which Merle was like, that's fucked up.
But I'm gonna do it because the money's good. And he was like, yeah, people order flower arrangements when they're like dying of Hanahaki, like, which is wild. People are like, it's kind of like hair of the dog that bit you, but like whatever. So I
as you well know, do not much care for contrivances. I really struggle with like stuff that is like not of this world in terms of like, you know, soulmate AU, like anything like that. Like I typically don't like this. Hanahaki is the exception. And I don't know why. I think it's because the angst override, but I loved that this felt so true in some ways to like how people deal with illness, that like there was a real groundedness in Hanahaki from the beginning. So when John had it and there was like a natural progression of it, and there were people that he like looked to for resources, and there was a culture around it. I really appreciated that, because it's a rare thing in my experience to read a Hanahaki fic that isn't like, this is a super rare like curse occurrence that like only you are experiencing. To have like, he watches a YouTube video about this guy who literally like sings a song to the person that he loves on his deathbed because he thinks he's gonna die, and then there's a YouTube update like 3 months later that like he lived and it was fine. And I was like, that is amazing. Like that level of world building is so cool. I loved that. And this wasn't like, it was angsty, but it wasn't brutal.
I never once felt like I cried, but not like I didn't sob, which is a good place to be.
It was that version of Hanahaki that I was talking about earlier, where it's not quite so deep angst, where it's like, this isn't great, but it glosses over some of the like sharper edges of it, so you could kind of pretty easily just be like, it's upsetting, but it's not, I'm not like actively traumatized. But I had a great time. Thank you for wrecking this, friend. Evelyn.
Oh my god, I really, 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 really enjoyed it. I want to say I loved it, but there's like it just doesn't quite cross that threshold for me. I'll start with like my criticisms. They're not many.
Great.
But I would say the only kind of thing that I struggled with a little was the pacing. I think that sometimes, because it's told in John's perspective, and I think it's very much, it's almost like a character study. Like every other paragraph is like how John is perceiving the world, and what his thoughts are, and how he's feeling, and that's great. But sometimes I felt like we just got into this kind of a circular motion, and it made it hard for me to focus on the narrative, because I'm starting to think like, whoop, 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 no matter how hard I wanted to keep reading.
I think that's fair. There are like, this fic could have done with, and probably some external editing, like somebody being like, just slash this bit down, but it's self-indulgent in a way that fanfic is allowed to be, you know? Like this person clearly loves writing from John's perspective, so I'm like, you wanted to write some feelings fic about this character that you like, and like I get it. So I agree, the pacing could have used some help, and there were definitely some parts where I dragged.
But man, I was really taken by it. Otherwise, I thought that, from what I gather of the wiki, I think that the hunger is like this nihilistic, like world-eating kind of entity, and I think that the character of John, which I think, spoilers for anyone who hasn't listened to the Adventure Zone, I think is a person who is controlling the hunger that Merle eventually meets, and is basically, because he realizes, like, he's like, there's no point to anything, like, is trying to destroy worlds and all of that kind of a thing. And so I thought that the way that translated over to this man who has never been able to connect with other human beings, and like has never actually desired to, like, he's always been really content with like just kind of moving from place to place, and the only thing that is consistent about him in his characterization is that he knows he wants something. He hungers for something, never knowing what it is, and so he tries all these things. His early retirement, he like goes off on expensive vacations because he's got money and stuff, and he comes back and he's always unfulfilled. He's like, I bring back like souvenirs and stuff, but they don't mean anything to me. Like, what are usually happy memories for people just are like cold objects. They don't mean anything. So I thought that the way that characterization was handled was really interesting, and I loved it. I loved it. It also felt like strangely relevant to me. I'm going through this renaissance, if you will, in my therapy session.
A renaissance? Is it fair to say that you are in your renaissance fair era?
I hate you.
Sorry, I'm leaving. Goodbye.
No. yeah, I've been having a lot of like conversations with my therapist and having a lot of like breakthroughs, I guess, in the way that I think and what I'm doing with my life. And for the first time in a very, like, maybe ever, I've reached a point where I'm not like looking for a relationship, or a partner. And I find that, oftentimes that's something that a lot of people will say, in an effort to try and move past and just be like, yeah, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. And, I'm okay being alone, single life, woo. All the time kind of wanting. And because I've been there before. I've said these words before and have been like, oh, yeah, but also maybe now that I'm not looking for it, it's going to find me kind of a thing.
Right. It's sort of like this weird, like, double negative. Like, what's it when you... it's not double negative. There's a word for this. When you say the thing opposite of what you want to try to get somebody to give you the thing that you do want.
Reverse psychology?
That one. It is a weird reverse psychology thing where you're like, I'm going to trick myself into landing a relationship by saying I don't want a relationship. Yeah,
exactly. It's that. But not this time. This is the first time maybe ever that I have felt like centered in on myself and like at peace and been like, I'm tired of like expending energy outwards into people that aren't necessarily expending that same energy back. I would rather spend that energy on myself, just do the things that I want. This is what I'm really at. This is my chasing joy phase. I'm literally chasing anything that brings me joy. Like any little thing I will indulge in and I'll be like, that's happy. That makes me happy. And that's what I want. And yeah, and so this fic found me in a really interesting time in my life, and I'm so appreciative because I think that I wrote it down somewhere in the middle of it. What struck me about this is I think that like the whole of this fanfic comes down to a man who is afraid to connect like with other people, who is afraid of being vulnerable because he is afraid of being pushed aside or of not being wanted. If you keep everyone at arm's length, if you don't let anyone get to know you, then you can never be rejected. And to have that with the like Hanahaki like trope was really fascinating because I was something I noticed while reading this. I was like, how does Merle has Hanahaki at the same time that John does. Like they overlap by like a month or something like that. And we didn't know. None of them knew until, post the great thing. And I was like, how then... It's really interesting to me how Hanahaki, at least in this universe, can't actually differentiate between whether or not that a love is actually reciprocated. Because in this instance, we know that it is. Like, we know because Merle is also going through it. But it's the things that we tell ourselves. It's the narratives that we lock ourselves to that ultimately do us in. And think about the, like, metaphor of coughing up, like, flowers. And, like, every time you think something romantic. And I was like, man, that is so beautiful. The imagery of, like, this is something that I'm expelling beauty, but it's so painful and could ultimately kill you. And that's exactly what unrequited love feels like. And like, I was just having like this whole moment where I was like, wow, this story, the way that they're handling this it's told so well and like made me feel like so at peace. And like, there's a kind of a through line throughout the whole fic is that John is talking about like, I don't want love, like all of that like hokey like kissing in the rain and like the public affection kind of thing, like it's never been for me. And then towards the end he comes to realize like, this is what love is. This is what it is. It's like, it's small. It's like going to the grocery store together. It's conversations. It's never wanting to be apart from this person. Like love doesn't have to look the way you think it is. Like I loved it. Okay, there it is. I'm glad. Okay, I've come back. I do love this fic. I'm a verbal processor. I finished this fic. Aaron can tell you an hour ago. I postponed the recording of this by like 35, nearly 40 minutes so that I could finish this fucking fic.
Yep.
So this is me processing real time. These discoveries, we're making them together. And it was just like, again, this is something that I said something similar with the episode with Burke on. I love when fanfic has the ability to like speak to something that is in my life and make me think about how I connect and how I present or what I would like to present. And this fic does that for me in a really interesting way. And so I loved it. I was enamored.
I love you a lot, friend.
I love you.
I'm just really glad that you're like going to therapy and having all these really important like breakthroughs about your life, and like I just want you to be happy, like whatever that looks like for you. I really love that you're chasing your joy. I think that's a great thing. We should go to the movies and just like eat popcorn and go see stuff, and like it'll be really great.
Oh my god, I love that. I love going to the movies.
I know, that's why I suggested it. I've met you.
It's true.
I recently rewatched Monty Python and told the story of when we went to go see Monty Python together. And we got to the end of the movie when it just cuts out for 4.5 minutes and there's no ending. And you looked at me and went, "What the fuck?" And the guy in front of us started laughing at you.
I was so offended. I was like, how dare they just end it like that? And you didn't warn me. You just laughed.
Yeah. But like, I'm really, really genuinely like impressed with your level of sort of like self-awareness and like self-work that's going on. And also like as somebody who's kind of gone through the journey of being alone, right? And like that has been my reality for the vast majority of my life in the romantic sense. I am not nearly alone in terms of like friends and loved ones, that kind of thing, but in the romantic sense, navigating that is hard. It is a hard thing because everyone and everything tells you that you should want this particular version of relationship in your life, and like you can want that, you can, and it like it can work out, it cannot, and there's all kinds of things, and like being able to stand on your own and have a deep relationship with yourself and like love yourself on your own is like, I think, the great fight of like self-actualization. Like it is something that we all struggle with because at the end of the day, like the person you carry with you is you. Yeah. And any relationship you have is wonderful, but like, you have to be able to sit quietly with your own heart. And so it's a hard thing to do.
I agree. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's been it's been an interesting few weeks in therapy.
It sounds like it. No, I mean, I'm so glad that you pulled so much out of this fic, despite it being a thing that neither of us knew anything about.
Yep. I really, it meant a lot to me, and I really, really enjoyed it. Oh, I've just thought of something else. Here, we'll make it a little sandwich.
Yes.
It's another criticism. It's a criticism I had. Little critique sandwich for you.
You're like, I just dropped all of this really deep personal like love and affection for this fic, but also like I have one more thing that's not positive to share.
Because I feel like sometimes like I read a fic and then afterwards I'm like, oh, I love that, and I just feel it like so like I loved this. I did love this fic, but it was also like it wasn't like immediate. Like I had to like work through some of it. And one of the things that I kind of took umbrage with was I felt like it was doing that telling more than showing. Like a lot of Merle and John like getting closer just happened on like, and they got closer, period. And then we kept moving. And I know part of that, it has to be hard because this is already like, it's not a small fic. It's not a short fic. And it wove Hanahaki into this universe and these characters really well. And there's so many characters. And I felt like all of them that were not like John and Merle got a lot of screen time. Like you got to see quite a bit of them and enough to know their personalities and like how they relate to John. So I appreciate that there was a lot that was going on. But I think that is my only other kind of gripe with it. I like the addition of the vignettes at the end. I look forward to reading them after this episode.
Oh my god. The vignettes are great.
I'm so excited.
I think you're really right about that. Yeah, I think you're really right to point that out. There is a certain amount of telling, not showing, particularly in the relationship. I think maybe some of that could be chalked up to it being very much a point of view of John, like being written from John's point of view, and he is an extremely sort of like analytical, like overly so analytical, like I don't think he knows what he's feeling until it's killing him, really. So this whole time, like, you don't get a lot of the sense of like a budding relationship or like feelings and like all that processing that goes on that can be like slow burn, sort of like butterflies in the stomach, because John has no fucking clue. Like, it's an unreliable narrator, so you just are like,
that's a great point.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that also can make for a somewhat difficult reading experience, because all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I love Merle, and you're like, how did you get there? Like, how did you get it logically, but I don't know that you feel it the way that you kind of like want to with a slow burn. So I think it's a double-edged thing there, where it's like it makes sense from a character perspective, but there was some times where I was like, okay, and it goes back to the like it gets really spirally sometimes, and like it goes back to that sort of feeling of like, okay, this probably actually could have been, despite being a very short fic for all of that it does, it could have been tightened up in certain spots to be more effective.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you for concisely saying what I was trying to say.
All good, friendo. This is what we do for each other. We are here to make each other sound smart.
Yep. Now, if you will indulge me, I have 3 quotes that I pulled that I was
the like, Alan quotes.
These are good.
Quotes by Alan, a segment of the podcast.
yeah. Can we get the like? Yep. It's like masterpiece theater. Like, welcome to Quotes with Alan.
Yes, 100%. Yes, quote me up.
And okay, so this first quote is from their not date at the race, when they're having like a picnic and whatnot, and John has taken like a spell so that he doesn't cough it up. He's trying to basically test himself. "This is precious," he told himself, and stared down at the dwarf telling his stories with a mischievous grin. This was what it was like to be in love, what he'd never had for 50 years. It wasn't earth-shattering. It wasn't like the movies at all, where he could see them sweeping each other up in the rain and kissing for hours while declaring a passionate, burning love for each other. It was simple and sweet, the lingering feeling of always wanting to be with someone and know everything about them.
Yes.
Come on. Beautiful.
It's a beautiful quote. Geraldine also just came over for more snuggles, so I was like,
oh my gosh. This next one comes at the when John is having to make his final decision whether or not he wants to try and counteract the spell that has been put on him, and whether or not he tries to save Merle. And he's starting to realize that, like, yes, he loves Merle, but all of the actions that he took was in like pushing Merle away, essentially, like not letting himself be loved. But loving and being loved were 2 different things entirely. And while he didn't have to worry about one, there's no way to stop someone from loving you. There weren't any manuals on how to cope with being loved, how to react, how to respond. And that brings me to, like, oh my gosh, something, I'm glad I read these, because that is another thing that I really loved about this fic, is that it explores that. It's like, the difficulty doesn't come from them not loving each other, or from their, like, will they, won't they. It comes from their inability to connect because of John, because he's so in his head and doesn't know how to be loved. Like, if you've never been loved, then that is terrifying. You've never connected with someone. Like, it's so easy to hurt someone else. It's so good.
Yep.
And then this last one is from I think it's they're at the hospital garden or something. So it's post them not dying, but John still having chronic Hanahaki.
Right.
Just because he was no longer cursed did not mean all of John's problems had been solved, and because he and Merle were finally together did not mean his life was perfect. There was still much that he as an individual would have to work through and figure out himself. An entire lifetime's worth of issues would still need to be confronted, especially now that he had another person in his life. But this wasn't about looking for a cure for all of his problems. It was a promise that he would never have to do it alone. And that is such a beautiful way to end, like, that entire narrative, which is like, being in love with someone, having the relationship doesn't mean that everything goes away. It does not mean that there's no longer any problems. It now just means that you have someone you can lean on to help you through those bad times. And I think it's such an important message that this fic just dropped at the end, and I'm glad it did, because I think sometimes it's easy to go the opposite with fanfics, where you're like, oh my god, the romance and being swept up in the epic grandeur of love, capital L. But it's important for, you know, people to realize that it's not just love is work. Love takes work. Right.
Love is work. It will not fix you, because first of all, the concept of people being fixable is a whole other conversation. But like the idea that like a relationship will just like solve all of your problems is so wildly just not true to what happens in real life. And like again, to go back to it, like, you have to be able to stand on your own, and like you can share that with people and people can help you with that. You don't exist in a vacuum, but
exactly.
like another person is also not going to like heal you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to heal yourself.
Agreed. Woo, man, I hope everyone has some tissues next to them.
I wasn't expecting this. It is Wednesday, my dudes.
It's Wednesday, my dudes. People are gonna start screaming that at you at the street.
I feel God in this Chili's tonight. When I'm uncomfortable, I spew Vine references.
Oh man. Oh, I guess we should rate that second fic.
Oh fuck yeah, we should. I will go with a 4.2.
Oh, nice. I love that.
Yeah, because I think it's more about the emotional resonance and the impact of it. I think probably where it gets knocked off is some of the writing elements of it that we talked about, like that whatever. But it was just like I got over that part of it, and it was just really well done. So let's roll.
Delightful.
I stand by that.
I'm gonna agree with you. I would also give it a 4.2. I know, we agree. It's so rare.
For once in our lives.
Yeah. Oh my god, can we talk about also too, I love that this fic, like the first 4 or 5 chapters were basically a flower shop AU.
Yes.
Like
yes.
the Hanahaki does not come in until like chapter 6 or 7, and I was living for it.
Yeah, they literally are just like John attempts to put flowers together in camp. Like that's the first 4 chapters of it. And I was like, great. And the author notes were like, we're finally at the plot. And then we were not at the plot. It was really great. I had a great time. Yeah, we did. We basically squeezed in another florist AU. You're not wrong.
It was good. I liked it. I love florist AUs, turns out.
Yeah. Who'd thunk it?
Who'd have thunk it?
Amazing. Well, that's Hanahaki, I think.
I would agree. I think that's we talked a lot.
We did. We talked a lot about Hanahaki. We unearthed some deep and interesting and personal truths about mostly you.
Yeah, this is true. But James says it's important to be vulnerable.
Yes. Especially into a microphone for the internet.
Yeah. Listen, I'm very vocal about my journey because I do it in the hopes that other people who may be on the fence about whether or not they want to look into therapy will be like, yeah, no, it's worth it. It really is.
All right, I was being a little bit of a gremlin, but you're so right. Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, we unapologetically stand therapy in this house.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So, Erin, where can people find us?
People can find us on a variety of different platforms. Like I said, we have a website now. So if you go to theficlist.com, you can find us there. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Podbean, Podchaser, Goodreads, iHeartRadio. Maybe not Goodreads. That's a lie. We're not on Goodreads. I don't know what that
Audible.
is.
Did you say Audible?
Audible. That's the one I meant. Audible, iHeartRadio, and really any platform that hosts an RSS feed. We're there. We are on TikTok.
We sure are.
Yep. Mostly me. I make fandom related stupid content and hope that people like it, and occasionally they do, and then I get validation. And I have to process that relationship with that at a later date. But it's very fun. So if you like very stupid fanfic related TikToks, go there. We are also on Twitter, is where I spend the other majority of my time. We are now on YouTube, but it's really specifically our panel from Fan Expo Boston, which was our previous episode, so like audio episodes. So if you just want to see us for the first time, you can just go to YouTube and find it there. But I don't expect any content there. We're on Instagram, but it's a repository for previously posted TikToks because Instagram Reel users are about 6 weeks behind. So
correct.
Maybe don't bother with Instagram, and definitely don't bother with Facebook. One thing that we wanted to point out and make a point to say, hey, thank you, and like shout out, is that we are on Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com, the fundraising platform. And it's really just sort of a way for us to maybe like offer an opportunity for people to help us offset the costs of the podcast. We don't make any money on TikTok. We don't make any money anywhere else. So there are like a small number of fees that incur when you host a podcast, mostly like, the RSS host website has a yearly fee. We now, the website will have some fees associated with it, things like that. So we were like, we'll have a Ko-Fi, and if people want to donate, cool. And then people did, and that was really, really sweet. So we wanted to really specifically shout out my Bailey, who says we are their new comfort podcast.
Oh, Bailey.
Haley, who said one Ko-Fi or coffee for each host. Keep being amazing. Again. Because she loves us and we deserve the best. Evelyn, who says mwah.
Aww.
And Wandering Quill, who did not leave a note but also donated. So thank you very sincerely from the bottom of our hearts. You helped offset another year of RSS feed hosting fees for this podcast, which is not an insignificant thing for us. Like both of us have, day jobs, and like it made an impact, and it was really, really wonderful. So thank you so much for donating. If you are a listener and you feel like tossing us a few bucks to help out, cool. Please don't ever feel like you have to. It's there if you want to. And it's linked in all of the link trees and things that we have everywhere. But that was a really
appreciative. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you all.
That was a really flippin' cool thing that happened. So thank you. I think that's. Oh, if you want to submit a fan rack, you can. It's linked. We talked about that before. If you want to read along with us, there's also a Google Doc for that. You can read along with us. It's in the summary of every episode, and it's also again in all of our social medias. I think that's it, right?
That feels it to me.
that feels right?
Yeah.
Great. Oh, the Tumblr! God damn it.
Oh, no.
I keep doing this, and it's not personal. It's because Caitlin runs it. So I interact with it as a fan. I don't think of it as my, like, a thing that I run. Caitlin runs the ficlistpodcast.tumblr.com, which is our Tumblr account, and it is amazing. Easily, like, one of the best Tumblrs ever, and I have nothing to do with it. I can say that because it's all Caitlin's genius. So our friend Caitlin runs it. If you love Tumblr, if you love fanfic memes, if you love some spicy queen memes, they're there. So yeah, go show Caitlin some love on the Tumblr. We love her very much. She and I, again, recovering from MCR this weekend, we spent a lot of time screaming our little emo brains off. So I'm wondering if that'll come up on the Tumblr anytime soon. But yeah, Tumblr, definitely follow us there.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's it for real this time.
Woo!
Yay!
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
You have at least one more coming, we promise.
Yeah, at least one more coming because we're going to record it now.
Yep, it's happening right now.
Great. Well done.
Yep.
Bye, friends.
Bye.